Have you ever noticed how strange it feels when the world goes quiet for just a moment? When you're not rushing, not scrolling, not chasing anything, and suddenly a thought slips in like a whisper. Who am I, really? Most people drown that question with noise, music, conversations, deadlines, endless plans. But in the rare moments when silence catches you off guard, the question returns. Hauntingly simple yet unbearably profound. You may tell yourself, I am a teacher, a business person, a parent, a friend. But if you peel back those layers, if you imagine losing the job, the possessions, the relationships, who remains? We live as if these masks are who we are, and yet deep down, a part of us knows they are only roles in a play, costumes we put on, not the actor who wears them. Think of the successful professional who worked all his life to climb the corporate ladder. Every promotion brought a moment of pride, every title a new badge of honor. Yet late at night, after the applause of the world faded, he sat in his quiet apartment feeling hollow, asking himself, what now? Or consider the artist whose fame grew so large that people no longer saw her, but only the image, the persona they projected onto her. She became trapped, unable to create freely, terrified that if she painted what she truly felt, people might reject her. Success, titles, admiration, none of them answered the original question. And then there is the ordinary man or woman, someone like you and me, living a life of responsibilities, bills, relationships, joys and struggles. They are told what they should want: security, love, recognition. And yet, even when these are achieved, a subtle emptiness remains, like a faint ache beneath the skin. It whispers in moments of exhaustion, after arguments, or in those nights when you lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if there's more to life than this endless cycle of desire and disappointment. The paradox is that we are surrounded by information, but we know so little of ourselves. We can predict the weather on the other side of the planet, we can send machines to Mars, we can split atoms, and yet when it comes to answering the simplest question, who am I? We stumble in confusion. If someone asked you, you might respond with your name, but your name is only a label. You didn't choose it, it was given to you. If tomorrow everyone forgot your name, would you cease to exist? Then you might say, I am my body. But your body is constantly changing, cells dying and being replaced. The body you had at 5 years old is not the body you inhabit today. Then perhaps you say, I am my mind. But the mind is nothing but thoughts, and thoughts come and go like clouds. If you are truly your thoughts, then who is it that notices them drifting by? This question has followed humanity across centuries. Saints, mystics, philosophers, and ordinary people have all paused to confront it. Some found answers in silence, some in wild ecstasy, some in rejection of society, and some in the embrace of it. And you listening now may think this is a question too abstract, too distant from daily life. But consider this: every decision you make, what career to pursue, who to love, how to respond to conflict, stems from your sense of who you think you are. If that sense is unclear, borrowed, or false, then your life, however busy and successful, floats unanchored, always seeking, never arriving. To know who you are is not about memorizing philosophies or clinging to beliefs. It begins with a confrontation. It begins with asking yourself, with raw honesty, what is left when I remove all that can be taken away? Imagine for a moment that everything you identify with falls away. Your possessions disappear. Your friends forget your name. Your body ages and loses its strength. Your memories dissolve. What remains? If this thought frightens you, it means you are still holding tightly to the illusion. But if it intrigues you, if it awakens something deep inside, then you are ready to walk the path of self-knowing. This is not a path of adding more, but of peeling away, of letting illusions burn until only the essence remains. You may resist, because the ego, that fragile bundle of stories and desires, will fight to survive. But the invitation is simple: to pause, to look inward, to discover that behind the restless tides of thought and emotion lies a stillness as vast as the sky. This stillness is not yours alone. It is the same essence that breathes through every tree, every star, every heartbeat. To know yourself is to recognize that you are not a fragment struggling in isolation, but the living pulse of the universe itself. And so we begin, not with answers, but with questions. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when you stop pretending? Who are you when you let go of the voice that says you must become something else? The journey to know the real self does not start tomorrow or in another place. It begins now, here, as you listen, as you dare to face the silence within. From the day we are born, we are given masks to wear. The first mask is a name, spoken with love by our parents, written on certificates, echoed by teachers. Then come the roles: child, student, worker, friend, lover, parent. Each mask feels real while we wear it, so real that we begin to believe it is who we are. Yet if you pause long enough, you might notice that none of these masks were chosen freely. They were given, expected, imposed. A student studies hard not only to learn, but to prove worthy, to earn approval. A professional clings to their title as if without it they might vanish into irrelevance. A parent sacrifices for children but forgets their own essence beneath the mask of responsibility. Consider the story of a doctor who spent decades building his reputation. He was known, respected, even admired for his knowledge. But one evening, during a quiet dinner, his young daughter asked him, "Papa, if you were not a doctor, who would you be?" For a moment he laughed, brushing it off. But later, alone, the question gnawed at him. He realized that without the white coat, without the stethoscope, he didn't know. His identity had fused with his profession, but when stripped away, he felt hollow, undefined. This is the danger of masks. They give temporary structure, but they hide the living truth of who you are. Or picture an artist, once bursting with creativity, who became famous for a particular style. The world celebrated her, demanded more of the same. Slowly she felt trapped, painting not from the raw fire of her soul, but from the expectation of others. She wore the mask of the celebrated artist, but underneath she felt suffocated, unseen, disconnected from her own art. Her true self whispered in the silence, but the mask screamed louder. And what about the ordinary person who is neither celebrated nor condemned, who simply lives day by day trying to fulfill duties? Even they wear masks. The mask of being a good son, a good employee, a good neighbor. But behind these labels hides the unspoken question: if I take all these away, do I disappear? Masks are not only external. We also wear masks inwardly, convincing ourselves we are what we want to believe. Someone who fears rejection may wear the mask of confidence, telling stories of success while trembling inside. Someone who feels anger may wear the mask of kindness, smiling politely while resentment burns within. Over time, the masks become so convincing that we forget they are masks at all. We begin to live not as who we are, but as who we think we should be. But life has a way of tearing masks apart. A sudden loss, a breakup, a failure, an illness. Moments like these strip away what we clung to. And though painful, these moments are also sacred. They reveal that the mask was never the real you. Think of the businessman who loses his wealth overnight. At first, despair consumes him. His mask of success shatters. But in time, as he sits with the emptiness, he realizes that something within him cannot be destroyed by bankruptcy, or the mother whose children grow up and leave home. She had lived for them, defined herself by them, but now the silence feels unbearable. Yet if she dares to face that silence, she may discover a self she had long forgotten. The masks also create shadows. Whatever we push away, deny, or hide becomes part of this shadow. The man who insists he is always strong hides his vulnerability in the shadow. The woman who strives to be pure hides her anger in the shadow. These hidden parts don't disappear. They shape our behavior from the dark, influencing choices, relationships, and fears. To truly know yourself, you must turn toward these shadows instead of running. You must see that the masks you wear are fragile coverings over a deeper, more complex being. But how do you begin to peel away the masks? The first step is noticing. In conversation, ask yourself, am I speaking to express what I truly feel or to maintain a role? In your work, ask, am I doing this because it is my passion or because I fear losing recognition? In your quiet moments, ask, if no one were watching, if no one were judging, what would I be doing right now? These questions are like mirrors. They reflect the mask and the self behind it. The truth is, masks are not wrong in themselves. We need them to navigate society, to play our part in the great drama of life. But the danger comes when we forget they are masks, when we mistake the role for the actor. Knowing yourself means playing the roles fully, being the parent, the friend, the worker, but never forgetting that behind them all, you remain something untouched, something vast. Imagine an actor on stage. He plays a king one night, a beggar the next. The audience may weep, laugh, or cheer, but when the curtain falls, he removes the costume and remembers who he truly is. Life is no different. You too are the actor, not the mask. And so the invitation is this: begin to question gently, patiently. Notice the masks you wear in your relationships, in your work, in your solitude. Notice how tightly you cling to them, how afraid you are of their loss. And then, in moments of stillness, remove them one by one, not with force, but with awareness. When you do, you may begin to glimpse the one behind the masks, the silent witness who has been there all along, watching, waiting for you to remember. When you close your eyes for just a moment and pay attention to the thoughts moving across your mind, you may notice something extraordinary. Thoughts arrive uninvited, linger for a while, and then dissolve, replaced by others. One moment you recall an old memory, the next you worry about tomorrow, the next you imagine a fantasy that may never happen. Yet through all these shifting shapes, something remains constant: the awareness that sees them. You are not the thought, because you can notice the thought. You are not the memory, because you can observe it arise and fade. You are not even the emotion, because even as anger burns or sadness weighs you down, some part of you knows, I am feeling this. That knowing is the inner witness, the quiet observer that never sleeps, never changes, never ages. Consider the example of anger. Imagine someone insults you. Instantly, a fire rises. Words want to spill out, your body tightens, your chest feels hot. In most cases, you react blindly, becoming the anger itself. But if you pause, even for a breath, you may notice that you can watch the anger, almost as if it belongs to someone else. You may say inwardly, I see this anger rising in me. In that instant, a space is created between you and the emotion. You are no longer trapped in it. You are the observer. The anger may still roar, but you now see it as passing weather, not your identity. The same is true with joy. Picture a day when you receive good news, perhaps a job, a success, or a word of affection. Happiness floods your being. But even then, if you look closely, you can see that joy too arises, glows brightly, and then slowly fades. The witness remains unchanged. Whether the sky is stormy with anger or radiant with joy, the witness is the sky itself, untouched by the clouds. Think of your dreams at night. You may dream you are flying. You may dream you are in danger. You may dream of loved ones long gone. While dreaming, it feels real. But when you wake, you realize it was only an appearance in the mind. Life itself is similar. Thoughts, emotions, identities. They are dreams that seem solid until awareness shines on them. The witness within you is the one who wakes up. But why is it so hard to recognize this witness? Because from childhood, our attention has been trained outward. We learn to focus on achievements, relationships, possessions, appearances. Rarely are we taught to turn the gaze inward. And when we do, the mind becomes restless. Sit in silence for even 5 minutes and suddenly the mind screams memories, plans, regrets, fantasies. The witness is always there, but it is drowned by noise. Only when you learn to be still, to watch patiently, does the witness reveal itself. Here is a story. A seeker once asked a sage, "How do I find myself?" The sage handed him a candle and said, "Take this into a dark cave and look around." The seeker did so. He entered the cave, lit the candle, and saw walls, rocks, shadows. Then he returned, confused, saying, "I saw only stones and darkness." The sage replied, "And what was it that allowed you to see them?" The seeker paused and realized it was the light. The lesson is simple. In trying to find the self in thoughts and feelings, you are looking at objects. The self is the light by which you see them. The witness is not another object to be seen, it is the seeing itself. To live with awareness of the witness is to walk through life with freedom. You may still feel sadness, but you no longer drown in it. You may still enjoy pleasure, but you no longer cling to it desperately. You begin to see that everything is a passing play on the stage of consciousness. This does not make life dull, it makes it luminous. You can laugh more freely because you are not afraid of sadness. You can love more deeply because you are not terrified of loss. You can live more fully because you are not imprisoned by identity. But the ego resists this realization. It thrives on being someone. It wants to be recognized, praised, validated. It fears that if you discover the witness, its grip will dissolve. And in truth, it will. That is why self-knowledge feels threatening at first. The ego whispers, "If you stop identifying with me, you will vanish." But the paradox is the opposite. When you let go of the false self, the real self shines. You may ask, how do I practice this? Start with small moments. When you feel anxious, instead of saying, "I am anxious," say, "Anxiety is here." When you feel joy, instead of clinging, say, "Joy is passing through." When you think, "I am a failure," notice instead, a thought of failure is arising. These subtle shifts remind you that you are not the content, but the container, not the storm, but the sky. And slowly, as you practice, something miraculous happens. The gaps between thoughts widen. The silence grows. You begin to sense a presence, vast and calm, always there beneath the noise. That presence is your real self. It was never lost, only forgotten. And once you touch it, even for a moment, you realize that you could lose everything: wealth, reputation, relationships, even your body. And still, this essence would remain untouched. That recognition is freedom. So ask yourself now, who is listening to these words? Who is aware of the thoughts rising in response? That listener, that silent knower, is the witness. And the witness is you. Every human life, if you look closely, is shaped by two powerful forces, desire and fear. Desire pulls us forward, fear holds us back. One whispers, "If I have this, I will be complete." The other warns, "If I lose this, I will be nothing." Together they form invisible chains, keeping us running in circles, exhausted yet never free. Picture a man who spends years chasing wealth. He rises early, works late, sacrifices relationships, burns his body with stress, all for the dream of security. Finally, he reaches his goal, but instead of peace, he finds himself lying awake at night, terrified of losing what he has built. The desire that once pulled him forward has now transformed into fear. he has not escaped the prison. He has only painted the bars a different color. Or imagine a woman who longs for love. She believes that if only she finds the right partner, her life will be whole. She dates, dreams, invests her energy into another person. When she finally finds someone, joy floods her being. But soon, fear creeps in, the fear of rejection, betrayal, abandonment. She becomes anxious, clingy, suspicious. The love she sought has become shadowed by the fear of losing it. Desire and fear are two sides of the same coin, and both keep the soul restless. We live in constant pursuit. More money, more recognition, more pleasure, more security. And yet with each achievement, a new fear is born, the fear of loss. This is why desire can never truly satisfy, because it always carries fear in its shadow. You may enjoy the fruits of your pursuit, but the sweetness is tainted by the anxiety of impermanence. The body ages, possessions fade, relationships shift, circumstances change. Desire promises permanence, but life guarantees change. To understand this trap, notice your daily thoughts. How many of them are about getting something you don't have, or keeping something you do? The mind constantly projects into the future. If I get that job, I'll be happy. If I lose this relationship, I'll be broken. In this endless cycle, the present moment is overlooked, wasted. We live not in reality, but in fantasies of what might come or fears of what might go. But what if you dared to stop? What if you allowed yourself to stand still, neither running toward nor away, but simply witnessing? In that stillness, you would see that desire is a trick of the mind, promising happiness, but delivering only temporary satisfaction. You would see that fear is the shadow of clinging, arising only because you mistake impermanent things for your identity. The truth is, you cannot lose what you truly are. You can lose objects, roles, relationships, but not the awareness that experiences them. Here is a story. A wealthy man once approached a sage, troubled by anxiety. "I have everything I could want," he said, "yet I live in fear. My business could collapse, my children could leave me, my body could fall ill. How do I find peace?" The sage handed him a clay cup filled with water and said, "Hold this as if your life depended on it." The man gripped it tightly, terrified of dropping it. After a few minutes, his hand began to ache, sweat dripping, fear rising. Then the sage said, "Now let it go." The man released the cup, and instantly relief flooded his body. The sage smiled. "This is your life. You cling to things as if your existence depends on them. Release the grip, and peace will follow." The prison of desire and fear is built by the mind itself. The mind is always calculating, measuring, comparing. I must have this. I must avoid that. But you are not the mind. The witness within you is free, untouched by gain or loss. To taste freedom, you must step back and see the game for what it is. Instead of chasing desire blindly, observe it. Notice the spark when you crave something, and then notice how quickly it fades once obtained. Instead of trembling before fear, look at it directly. Ask, "Who is afraid?" You will discover that fear thrives only when you identify with what can be lost. Imagine standing by the ocean. Waves crash, foam rises, tides shift. Some waves you may desire, others you may fear. But if you recognize yourself not as the wave, but as the ocean itself, then desire and fear lose their grip. They may rise, but they cannot bind you. This does not mean renouncing life, becoming cold or detached. On the contrary, when you see through desire and fear, you begin to live more fully. You can enjoy pleasures without clinging to them, knowing they are passing gifts. You can face challenges without being paralyzed, knowing they too will pass. You discover a deeper joy, one not dependent on what you gain or lose, but rooted in the unchanging presence within. And so, ask yourself now, How much of your life has been shaped by chasing desire or fleeing fear? How many choices were made not from freedom, but from compulsion? The first step to liberation is awareness. Begin to notice. Each time a desire arises, ask, will this truly complete me, or will it only create a new fear? Each time fear arises, ask, what in me can actually be harmed? Slowly you will see that the prison doors have always been open. You only need the courage to step through. Every person carries within them a hidden world, a side they rarely show, even to themselves. This hidden side is made up of all the parts of us that we reject, deny, or fear: anger, jealousy, greed, lust, insecurity, doubt. Society teaches us early on which qualities are acceptable and which are unacceptable. As children, when we expressed raw emotions, we were often told to suppress them. A boy who cried was told to be strong, so he hid his tenderness. A girl who shouted in anger was told to be polite, so she buried her fire. Piece by piece, we pushed these parts into the dark, pretending they did not exist. But the truth is, they did not vanish. They sank into the unconscious, becoming a shadow that influences us from behind the curtain. Think of the man who prides himself on being gentle and kind. Outwardly, he appears calm, but inside he carries unacknowledged rage. When triggered, his suppressed anger bursts out uncontrollably, shocking even him. Or the woman who always appears confident, admired by others, but deep inside she hides a deep sense of insecurity. She overcompensates by projecting strength, but at night, she collapses under the weight of her own self-doubt. These examples reveal a painful truth. What we reject in ourselves does not disappear. It gains power. The shadow often shows itself in projections. You might notice yourself despising qualities in others that secretly exist in you. A man who condemns arrogance may himself carry a hidden arrogance he has not faced. A woman who cannot tolerate dishonesty may be repressing her own subtle manipulations. By projecting the shadow onto others, we avoid facing it within ourselves. But until we recognize it, we remain enslaved by it. To know your real self, you must be courageous enough to turn toward the shadow. This is not about indulging it, but about seeing it clearly, without judgment. If you feel envy, acknowledge it. Yes, envy is here. If you feel lust, admit it without shame. Yes, this too is part of me. If you feel rage, let yourself observe it fully. The very act of acknowledgement brings light into the darkness. What was once hidden and dangerous becomes integrated, transformed into energy that can serve growth instead of destruction. Here is a story. A seeker once came to a teacher and confessed, "I am haunted by anger, lust, greed. I try to meditate them away, but they keep returning." The teacher smiled and said, "Invite them to tea." The seeker was confused. "Why would I invite them?" The teacher replied, "Because they are part of you. By rejecting them, you give them power. By welcoming them, you transform them." The seeker tried it. Each time an unwanted emotion arose, instead of resisting, he said inwardly, "Come, sit with me." Over time, he found that the emotions lost their grip, becoming passing guests instead of tyrants. The shadow is not only darkness, it also hides gifts. Sometimes what we repress are not just negative qualities, but strengths we were told were unacceptable. A child who loved to sing may have been mocked and silenced, hiding their creative spark in the shadow. A young person who questioned authority may have been punished, burying their gift of insight. By reclaiming the shadow, we not only heal wounds but also recover lost treasures of the soul. Integration does not mean becoming flawless. It means becoming whole. Light and dark, strength and weakness, love and anger, all are part of the human experience. To deny one side is to live in imbalance. To embrace both is to walk in authenticity. When you integrate the shadow, you no longer live in fear of being exposed. You no longer waste energy pretending. You become real. Ask yourself now, what qualities do I reject most strongly in myself? Which emotions do I refuse to admit? Which traits in others trigger me the most? These questions point toward your shadow. The answers may be uncomfortable, but they are doorways to freedom. For the real self is not a perfect saint. It is the totality of your being, raw and unfiltered. Only when you embrace all parts of yourself do you stand in wholeness. And once you do, a strange thing happens. Compassion deepens. You no longer judge others so harshly because you recognize their struggles as your own. You no longer hide behind masks because you are no longer ashamed of your humanity. You begin to live with an authenticity that cannot be shaken by opinion or pretense. This is the power of integration. The shadow, once feared, becomes your ally, guiding you to the depths of your own soul. When words grow too heavy and thoughts too loud, silence becomes the only true language. In silence, something extraordinary happens. The masks drop, the mind slows, and the hidden rhythm of existence begins to reveal itself. Yet most of us are terrified of silence. We fill every empty space with noise, music, chatter, screens, as if afraid that silence might expose something we do not want to see. But the truth is, silence does not create emptiness. It uncovers the fullness that was always there. Imagine sitting by a still lake at dawn. The water is so calm that the mountains and sky reflect perfectly upon its surface. If even a small stone is thrown, ripples disturb the reflection, blurring the image. The mind works the same way. In constant movement, it distorts reality, making it impossible to see clearly. But in stillness, the mind becomes like that calm lake, reflecting life as it is. In such moments, you begin to glimpse your real self, not as a thought, not as an idea, but as the silent awareness that is always present. Many think meditation is about forcing the mind to stop, but silence cannot be forced. It arrives naturally when you stop resisting. Try this simple practice. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and instead of controlling your thoughts, simply watch them. Thoughts will come, like visitors knocking on the door. Some may be pleasant, others painful. Do not chase them, do not fight them. Just watch. Slowly, as you remain the witness, the mind grows quieter. And in the gaps between thoughts, silence shines through. Those gaps are windows into your real self. There is an ancient understanding that within each person lies a subtle energy, often described as a serpent coiled at the base of the spine. Most people live their whole lives without noticing it, because their awareness is consumed outward. But when the mind becomes still, this energy awakens. It rises through the body, opening hidden centers of perception, filling you with a sense that you are more than flesh and bone, more than thought and memory. You are life itself, vibrating, radiant, eternal. Consider the story of a villager who once asked a king, "Why are you never at peace, though you live in a palace of gold, while I, who have nothing, sleep peacefully under the stars?" The king replied, "Because I am surrounded by noise, advisors, courtiers, battles, ambitions. My mind never rests." The villager smiled. "Then you have wealth, but not silence. Without silence, wealth is poverty." In this simple truth lies a profound lesson. Peace is not found in possessions, but in stillness. When silence deepens, even ordinary experiences transform. A breath feels sacred. A bird's song feels like a message from the infinite. A simple meal becomes communion with existence. You begin to realize that life has always been speaking to you, but the noise of the mind was too loud to hear. In silence, energy flows freely. The body feels lighter, the heart more open, the mind more spacious. You may even feel currents of energy rising through your spine, tingling in your forehead, pulsing in your chest. These are not fantasies. They are signs that you are tuning into the deeper layers of your being. But beware. Silence is not an escape from life. It is not about hiding from the world. It is about entering life more fully, from the ground of awareness. When you cultivate silence, you do not become passive. You become more alive, because your actions arise not from compulsion, but from clarity. Words spoken from silence carry weight. Actions born from stillness carry power. Even your presence begins to radiate calm, touching those around you without effort. Ask yourself now, when was the last time you allowed yourself to sit in pure stillness, without distraction, without reaching for a phone, without filling the air with talk? What feelings arose? Restlessness, boredom, even discomfort? These are signs of how estranged we have become from silence. Yet if you persist gently, if you return again and again, you will find that beneath the discomfort lies a vast ocean of peace. In that peace, the real self begins to reveal itself, not as an idea, but as a living experience. You realize that you are not the storm of thoughts, but the space in which they arise. You are not the body that changes, but the energy that animates it. You are not the roles you play, but the awareness that plays them. And once this is glimpsed, even for a moment, a door opens to a deeper way of living. All your life you have been taught to hold tightly to the sense of I. You say, I am this, I am that. I am my name, my story, my success, my pain. But have you ever stopped to ask, what is this I? If you trace it carefully, you will find that it is made of memory. The child who once played in the dirt, the teenager who dreamed of love, the adult who struggled and achieved. These are layers of memory, woven together into a story you call me. Yet memory is not solid. It is fragile, changing, incomplete. Some memories fade, others distort, some vanish altogether. If your identity is built from memory, can it truly be who you are? Consider how often you say, I am angry, I am happy, I am tired. But these are passing states. One moment you are angry, the next you are calm. One moment you are tired, the next you are energized. If the I changes with every mood, then it cannot be the real self. The truth is, the I you cling to is like a mask made of shifting sand, never stable, never real. Imagine your life as a necklace of beads. Each bead is an experience: childhood, youth, adulthood, relationships, work. The thread holding them together is the sense of I. But look closer. The beads are real experiences, but the thread is imagined. You believe there is a continuous self tying them together, but in reality, each moment arises fresh, independent. The I is only a story that links them after the fact. Without the story, there are only moments flowing like a river, never the same twice. When you realize this, something remarkable happens. The weight of identity begins to dissolve. You no longer cling desperately to being someone. You no longer fear the loss of roles, because you see they were never truly you. You begin to taste freedom, the freedom of being nobody in particular, yet alive, aware, present. This dissolution is not destruction, it is liberation. It is like a drop of water realizing it was never separate from the ocean. The drop dissolves, but in dissolving, it discovers its true vastness. In the same way, when the ego self dissolves, you do not vanish. You expand. You discover that what you called me was only a wave on the ocean of consciousness. The wave may rise and fall, but the ocean remains infinite. There is a fear in letting go. If I release my identity, what will remain? But look closely. In deep sleep, you forget your name, your body, your story, and yet you still exist. There is still awareness, still being, even without identity. This shows you that the real self does not depend on memory or role. It is the pure presence that shines even when the I disappears. Here is a story. A disciple once asked a master, "What must I do to know who I am?" The master replied, "Die before you die." The disciple was confused. "How can I die before I die?" The master explained, "Let the false self die. The stories, the masks, the ego. When they dissolve, you will discover the deathless. This is the essence of the dissolution of self. Not physical death, but the death of illusion, the dropping of the false I." As you listen now, reflect. Who would you be if you stopped clinging to your story? Who would you be if all labels were stripped away? At first, it may feel like emptiness, but if you rest in that emptiness, you will see it is not barren but overflowing. It is silence, vastness, freedom. This is your real self, boundless, timeless, infinite. So here we are, at the end of this exploration, yet also at the beginning. We began with a simple but profound question. Who am I? We walked through the masks we wear, the shadows we hide, the desires and fears that bind us, the witness within, the silence that reveals, and finally the dissolution of the false self. Each step has been a peeling away, a letting go, an invitation to see not what you think you are, but what you truly are. And now, as you listen, let the words fall away and rest in the stillness behind them. The real self cannot be captured in definitions. It cannot be held by thoughts, for thoughts are too small to contain the infinite. It cannot be imprisoned in identities, for it is older than every role you have ever played. The real self is the awareness listening right now, the silence between words, the space in which all experience arises and dissolves. It is not separate from life, but is life itself. The same force that beats your heart, moves the stars and breathes through every living being. When you recognize this, fear loses its grip. How can you fear death if you see that what you truly are was never born and can never die? How can you cling desperately to possessions and titles when you know they are only costumes in a passing play? How can you hate another when you see that at the deepest level, there is no other, only one consciousness expressing itself in countless forms? This realization is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new way of living. It does not mean withdrawing from the world, but entering it fully, with clarity and compassion. You still play your roles, parent, friend, worker, lover, but now you play them with freedom, knowing they are roles, not prisons. You still feel joy and sorrow, but you no longer drown in them, for you know they are waves on the vast ocean of your being. You live with authenticity, without pretense, without fear of exposure, because you have nothing to hide. You are whole. And now, I leave you with a question. Not to answer with the mind, but to hold in the silence of your heart. When all masks fall, when all stories dissolve, when even the thought of I disappears, who remains? Sit with this question in quiet moments. Let it echo. Let it unsettle you, liberate you, guide you. For the answer is not in words. The answer is in the direct experience of being. Close your eyes. Breathe. Feel the presence that is here now. That presence is your real self. It has always been here. It will always be here. Remember it, return to it, live from it. For in knowing who you are, you discover that you were never lost. You were always the witness, the silence, the infinite, the one without a second.